Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and seen not just fear, but the vivid memory of every time that person was broken? There are wounds that never fully heal, no matter how much time passes. How many miles you put between you and the pain. How many times you convince yourself you've overcome it. They simply form fragile, paper-thin scabs that crack at the right touch. And for her, that touch came in the form of a man who should have been imprisoned, or dead, or at least far enough away to never matter again. But ghosts don't respect distance. They don't respect restraining orders. They don't respect how hard you worked to rebuild the life they destroyed. 3 years. She had spent 3 whole years building something that resembled peace. It wasn't happiness. She had abandoned that ambition when she learned that men who say they love you can be the same ones who break your ribs. But it was security. It was routine. It was waking up without the immediate fear that that day would be her last. And then, on an ordinary Tuesday, in a library smelling of old paper and silent possibilities, he appeared. Ethan Mercer, the man who promised the world and delivered hell. The man whose fists she still felt, in nightmares she didn't share with anyone. And when his eyes met hers through the dusty shelves, when he smiled as if time had been an eraser, wiping away blood and tears, she felt every inch of progress she had made crumble in seconds. Stay with me until the end, because what happened next is about more than just surviving. It's about discovering that sometimes the right person shows up exactly when you swore you'd never need anyone again. Because while she was trying to breathe, trying not to collapse right there among history books that documented horrors of the past, while hers stood in front of her, someone else was watching. Sheriff Jake Dawson. He had noticed her years ago when she arrived in town, the quiet woman who avoided eye contact, who disappeared before sunset, who carried tension in her shoulders, as if she expected a blow at any moment. He recognized survivors when he saw them. He had seen many. So he respected her space, never forced a conversation, just reassured her from afar that she was safe. But that day, when he saw her emerge from the library, her face as pale as wax, her hands trembling so violently she could barely hold her purse, her gaze like a hunted animal searching for an escape route, something clicked inside him. It wasn't professional instinct or, not only that, it was a visceral recognition of fresh trauma in person that he had learned to read, and the primal urge to place himself between her and anything that caused that kind of fear. Because Jake understood something fundamental that most don't. There's a difference between fear of a new threat and fear stemming from old trauma being reactivated. The first makes you run. The second paralyzes you, because it's not just about present danger, it's about all the previous times you couldn't escape. And when Jake began to investigate, when he discovered who Ethan Mercer was and what he had done, when he read medical reports documenting months of systematic violence, when he saw photos that should never have existed of someone he knew as a kind librarian reduced to bruises and broken bones, he understood with brutal clarity, protecting her wouldn't just be about keeping her alive. It would be something infinitely more complex, more delicate, more important. It would be teaching a heart that had learned to close itself off as a survival mechanism that it was safe to open again. It would be showing someone who trusted the wrong person and paid a devastating price that not all men destroy. That some build, that some protect, not to control, but to liberate. Have you ever needed to trust again after being completely destroyed by the person who promised to love you? Because that's what was at stake. Not just capturing a violent man. Jake could do that in his sleep, but gaining the trust of a woman who had every reason in the world to never trust anyone again. Especially not a man with a badge and a gun who could easily use power to hurt instead of protect. And while Ethan was out there, prowling the city like a predator marking his territory, leaving gifts and messages that mixed unhealthy romanticism with veiled threats, Jake knew that every second counted. Because men like Ethan don't come back to ask for forgiveness. They come back to reclaim what they consider property. And they only stop when forced to. The war that was beginning wouldn't be fought only in the streets of the small town or in the courts that had failed to keep her safe the first time. It would be fought in the delicate space between two people who needed each other in ways neither was ready to admit, she needing someone strong enough to confront the ghost that haunted her, he needing to prove to himself that he could save someone in the way that mattered, not just physically but emotionally. And to understand how we got to this point of inevitable collision, to understand why this story is different from all others about protection and danger, we need to go back to the beginning. Who she was before Ethan destroyed everything. Because to understand the impact of his return, you need to know the woman she wasn't, the survivor she became. 3 years ago, she was different. Not radically, but in subtle ways that only those who have experienced trauma recognize. She smiled more easily. She trusted by default instead of distrusting. She believed that love was a sanctuary, not a battlefield. She had just moved to the big city, landed her dream job at a publishing house, and rented a tiny apartment that was all her own. Life was finally beginning, after years of struggling to leave the small town where she grew up. It was at a bar after work that she met Ethan. He was everything she thought she wanted: charming, attentive, genuinely interested in what she said, not like other guys who just waited for their turn to speak. Ethan listened. He asked questions. He remembered details. 2 weeks later, they were dating. 2 months later, he had a key to her apartment. 6 months later, he was officially living there. And it was so gradual, so subtle, that she didn't realize when attention turned into surveillance, when care turned into control, when love turned into imprisonment. If something like this has ever happened to you, if you recognize these signs or know someone who has gone through this, share in the comments. Sometimes just knowing that we are not alone in these experiences already brings a little healing, because what Ethan did wasn't a sudden explosion of violence. It was systematic erosion. It started with jealousy that he disguised as proof of how much he cared. I just don't like it when other guys look at you. It's because I love you too much. Then came the criticism disguised as concern. Isn't that outfit a little too provocative? I don't want people to think badly of you. Then the isolation. Your friends don't value you like I do. Why waste time with them when we can be together? In 8 months, she had lost touch with most of her friends, stopped attending social events, started asking permission without realizing she was asking for basic things, like going out after work or visiting family. And when she finally dared to question him, when she said she needed space, that the relationship was suffocating, Ethan showed his true colors. The first time he hit her was 3 days before their 1-year anniversary. An argument over her wanting to have dinner with coworkers. He said no. She insisted. And then his hand struck her face with such force that it threw her to the ground. The silence that followed was louder than the impact. Ethan fell to his knees, crying, begging forgiveness. I don't know what came over me. My God, I will never do it again. Please don't leave me. I love you so much, I've gone crazy. And she, stunned, hurting, confused, believed him. Because that's what abusers do, better than anything else. They make you question your own perception. They make you believe it was an isolated incident, that his love is so intense, that it sometimes overflows in destructive ways, but that deep down, it's pure. If this part resonated with you in any way, if you felt the weight of this manipulation, leave a like so I know you're following this journey with me. Because what happened next was a vicious cycle that she recognizes now but couldn't see then. Aggression, performative remorse, a temporary honeymoon where he was perfect, growing tension, another act of aggression, worse than the last. And the cycle began again. Each turn intensifying the violence, each period of peace shrinking until there was no peace left, only varying degrees of danger. It took 18 months. 18 months of brutal escalation leading up to the night that nearly killed her. An argument about her getting a promotion at work, a promotion that would mean more hours, more independence, more contact with the outside world that he so desperately wanted to cut off. Ethan exploded. It wasn't a beating. It was attempted murder disguised as loss of control, broken ribs, head trauma, bruises covering 80% of her body. Neighbors called the police when they heard screams. Paramedics found her unconscious. Hospital reports, forensic photos, restraining order, his arrest, trial, where the defense attorney tried to portray her as provocative, as if any provocation justified nearly killing someone. But the prosecution was strong. The evidence was irrefutable. Ethan got 5 years, and she, with her body still healing, received a life sentence of hypervigilance and trauma that therapy alleviated but did not erase. So she did what survivors do. She started over. New city, new job, almost a new identity, not legally, but emotionally. She buried the woman who trusted easily and became the woman who compulsively checked locks. She left a glamorous publishing house and accepted a quiet position in a small-town library where everyone knew everyone and novelty was rare. She built a life that was safe precisely because it was small, controlled, predictable. And if you want to see more stories like this, stories that explore not only the danger but the journey of healing, of learning to trust again, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because this story is only just beginning. And what comes next will show that sometimes the right person appears exactly when you're convinced you don't need anyone. That true protection doesn't come from someone who wants to control you, but from someone who wants to free you from the fear that holds you back. And it was this woman rebuilt brick by brick, scarred but not healed, a survivor but not living fully, that Ethan found in that library. And it was this woman, with all her carefully constructed defenses, that Jake Dawson decided to protect not only from external danger, but from the kind of internal pain that no weapon can stop. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because reconstruction isn't a linear journey that you complete, and that's it. Certificate issued, life fixed. It's a daily, exhausting process of choosing to wake up and try again even when every cell in your body screams to stay in bed. Lock doors, disconnect from the world. And she had become a master at this painful art of existing without truly living. The last 3 years have been a meticulous exercise in control, not over other people, but over her own environment, her own reactions, her own level of exposure to a world that had proven too dangerous to trust. The library was the perfect choice, silent, predictable. Books didn't hurt, they didn't lie. They didn't promise eternal love and deliver punches. She arrived at 8 in the morning, just as the sun began to filter through the high windows, illuminating particles of dust dancing in the still air. She organized returns, cataloged new acquisitions, helped the few visitors who appeared mostly elderly people looking for light novels or parents with small children wanting illustrated books. Interactions were brief, transactional, safe. At 5 in the afternoon, she locked everything up, checked each window twice, and left before darkness began to swallow the streets. The apartment was an extension of this carefully constructed fortress. Ground floor, because a fire on an upper floor, with no escape route, was one of the recurring nightmares. To exits the front door and the bedroom window that opened onto an alley, always unlocked from the inside for emergencies. Neighbors close enough to hear screams, but not so close as to invade privacy. Minimal, functional furniture, nothing so expensive that it would hurt to leave it behind if you needed to flee again. Because survivors always have an escape plan. Always. People in the city saw her as shy. Some called her reserved, the less generous, cold. She heard these labels and didn't correct them because correction would require explanation, and explanation would require vulnerability she couldn't afford. So she let them think what they wanted. Better to be seen as antisocial than as a victim. Because victims attract predators, and she already had her quota of predators for life. She maintained deliberately superficial, social circle polite greetings, conversations about the weather, Generic comments about books. Nothing deep. Nothing that would create bonds that would later hurt to break. But the hidden truth she kept, the one she woke up with every morning and lay beside her every night, was that this wasn't coldness. It was self-preservation in its purest form. It was what's left when you learn, in the most brutal way possible, that trusting the wrong man can cost more than a broken heart. It can cost ribs. It can cost conscience. It can cost life. So you stop trusting. You stop taking risks. You stop opening up. And you build walls so high that even you can no longer see over them. At night, after the sun set and the city fell asleep, the security routine began. Front door lock, chain, extra lock she installed herself. Windows all checked, even the ones she never opened. Closet, bathroom, under the bed checked, because a traumatized mind doesn't accept that empty spaces are truly empty. Pepper spray on the bedside table. Phone loaded with 911 on speed dial. Kitchen knife in the second drawer. Escape plan mentally revised. If someone enters through the door, I'll go out the window. If they block the window, I'll fight. I always fight. Statistically, the city was safe. Violent crime was rare. Most people didn't even lock their doors. But safety isn't about statistics when your body carries memories of violence. It's about survival. It's about ensuring you wake up the next day. And her body, even 3 years later, still operated in a constant threat mode. Hypervigilance wasn't a choice. It was neurological programming that trauma had installed, and that therapy, however useful, couldn't completely erase. The nightmares came 2-3 times a week. Always variations on the same theme: Ethan finding her. Ethan invading the sanctuary she built. Ethan finishing what he started that night in the hospital. She would wake up sweating, her heart racing, taking an eternity to recognize her own room, to remember that she was 1,500 kilometers away from him, that he was in prison, that a restraining order was in effect. But rational reassurance didn't calm her panicked nervous system. So she would get up, check the locks again, drink chamomile tea that didn't work, and stay awake until dawn watching idiotic programs on TV, because silence was when memories screamed the loudest. The transformation she sought wasn't dramatic. She didn't dream of being brave or fearless or completely healed. She only dreamed of sleeping through the night without waking up, of not jumping when someone raised their voice, of being able to go on a date hypothetical, distant without calculating escape routes, or assessing whether the man in front of her had the potential for violence. She dreamed of normalcy, of the mundane, of the boring, because boring was a luxury that trauma had stolen from her. But there was an unexpected impact from this carefully controlled life: loneliness. Not the physical loneliness of living alone, that was a choice, a safety net, but the emotional loneliness of carrying burdens alone, of having no one to say today was a difficult day and truly be heard, of not sharing fears, small victories, moments when the past hurt less. Therapy helped, of course, but a therapist was paid to listen. She wasn't a friend, she wasn't family, she wasn't someone who chose to stay. And it was in this solitude that she had settled, not comfortably but resignedly, when Ethan appeared. It was as if the universe had decided to test whether the foundation she had built was solid or just a pretty facade over ruins. That Tuesday in the library, when she turned and saw him between the shelves, smiling as if he had the right to be there, as if 3 years and a court order were mere formalities, she felt the foundation crack. Her body reacted before her mind. Hands began to tremble, not subtly, but violently, books she held falling to the floor with a thud that echoed in the library's silence. Breath caught in her throat, air refusing to enter. Peripheral vision darkening, a tunnel forming with Ethan at its center, walking toward her with that obscene confidence of a man who had never faced real consequences. And his voice, my God. The voice was identical, calm, almost gentle tone, one she knew from painful experience, masking violence, waiting to explode. Hi, love. I missed you. 3 words. 3 words that erased 3 years of rebuilding in 3 seconds. Because love in his mouth wasn't a term of endearment. It was a claim of ownership. It was a reminder that he still thought she belonged to him. That time and distance and trauma changed nothing. And missed you was such a transparent lie that it would be comical if it weren't terrifying. Ethan didn't miss her. He missed the control he had over her. He missed being able to break someone and have them always come back. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She just backed up until she hit the bookcase behind her, hard wood against a column, blocking her escape route. Ethan interpreted it as an invitation to move forward. Calm down. I just came to talk. I left because of good behavior. As if that were reassuring. As if good behavior changed who he was, what he had done. I thought we could start over, begin again, forget all that. Forget, as if hospitalization were a misunderstanding, as if broken ribs were an accident, as if the trauma that woke her up every night could be erased with forgiveness and a fresh start. But she knew this script. She had lived this script, and she knew that the next step would be for him to minimize it, then blame her, then intensify it until there was no way out except through him. It was survival instinct that drove her. She grabbed her bag, mumbled an incoherent excuse, and simply left. Walking too fast to be casual, but not running because running would show fear, and fear fed predators. She felt his eyes on her back all the way to the door. She didn't look back. She couldn't, because looking back would mean acknowledging that he was real, that he was there, that the nightmare had materialized. The journey home was a fog. She didn't remember crossing streets, entering the building, climbing stairs. She only remembered finally locking the door, all 3 locks, and sliding across the floor until she sat down, her back against the wood, trembling so violently that her teeth chattered. And it was there, on the cold floor of the apartment that represented 3 years of carefully constructed security, that she understood. Ethan hadn't come just to talk. He had come to show her that he could see her whenever he wanted. That distance was an illusion. That security was a lie, she told herself. That he still had power over her even without touching her, even without speaking more than 10 words. And the most terrifying revelation of all, he wasn't going to stop. Men like Ethan never stop until they're forced to. And she, alone, without a support network, without anyone who truly knew the whole story, didn't have the strength to force him. She had used all the courage she possessed just to survive the first time. There was no secret reserve for a second round. Comment below. This makes sense to me, because sometimes the scariest thing isn't the danger you've never seen, but the one you already know intimately. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a fundamental difference between theoretical fear and lived fear. Theoretical fear you can rationalize, you can prepare mental defenses, you can say, if this happens, I will do that. But lived fear, the kind that comes from a traumatic experience being reenacted in real time, that doesn't obey logic. It hijacks the entire body, shuts down the prefrontal cortex, and activates a primitive survival mode that reduces your options to 3: fight, flight, or freeze. And on that bathroom floor, with all the lights off and her body trembling so violently it felt like a convulsion, she was experiencing all 3 simultaneously. His mind struggled to process the impossible. Ethan was in prison. 5 years. He had seen the sentence pronounced, had seen the expression of contained anger on his face as the handcuffs were put on, had heard the prosecutor assure him that he would be away long enough for her to rebuild her life. But good behavior, 2 words the judicial system uses as if they were a deserved reward, without considering that behavior in prison does not predict behavior in the real world. Without considering that an offender who knows how to feign remorse for parole board is precisely the most dangerous type. 3 years. He had served only 3 of the 5, and no one warned her. There was no call from the prosecutor, no official letter, no automatic notification system. Just Ethan appearing like a materialized ghost in the only place where she felt safe during the day. That wasn't an accident, it was a calculated choice. He could have stayed away. He could have respected the restraining order that was technically still in effect. But respect was never part of his vocabulary. The hours that followed were a test of endurance. She stayed in the bathroom until her legs tingled from poor circulation. She only got up when her bladder screamed an emergency. Then she returned, not to the bathroom, but to the corner between the bed and the wall where she could see the bedroom door and the window simultaneously. She didn't eat. She didn't drink water. She just sat there, hugging her knees, listening to every sound from the building as if it were an imminent threat. Upstairs neighbor, dragging a chair. Could it be Ethan breaking into the roof? Door slamming in the hallway. Could it be him checking out apartments to find hers? Car driving by on the street? Could it be him doing reconnaissance, mapping out routines, planning his next move? The reconstruction journey that took 3 years to build was crumbling in real time, brick by brick, until all that remained was a cracked foundation and a broken woman sitting in a dark corner, waiting for the inevitable. The decision she made that night, or rather, the non-decision she made, was not to tell anyone, not to call the police, because what would they say? He spoke to you in the library. He didn't touch you. He didn't explicitly threaten you. Technically, he didn't violate a restraining order because he was in a public space. Not to call her therapist because her session wasn't until Thursday and she needed to hold out until then. Not to call her friends because she didn't have any friends. Not really. Not the kind you call at 2 a.m, saying, "I'm terrified and I don't know what to do." So she did what survivors do when the system fails. She tried to cope alone. She woke up the next day after not having slept. She took a cold shower because hot water required taking off clothes and remaining vulnerable for too long. She wore clothes that covered everything: jeans, a long-sleeved shirt, nothing that could be interpreted as an invitation or provocation in the abuser's distorted logic. She tied her hair back. She didn't put on makeup. She made herself as invisible as possible. The journey to the library was like a military operation. He left half an hour earlier, took a different route, looked over his shoulder at every block. He didn't see Ethan, but that didn't mean he wasn't there. Predators don't always hunt visibly. Sometimes they just observe, learn patterns, wait for the right moment. And the knowledge that he could be anywhere, watching from any window or parked car, turned the entire city into a minefield. The library was supposed to be a sanctuary, but now it was contaminated. Every time the door opened, her heart raced. Each customer who entered was a cestite. Wait, could it be Ethan in disguise? Paranoia, perhaps. Or perhaps justified. Hypervigilance based on past experience. The line between the two was impossible to discern when her brain was operating in survival mode. The transformation that Ethan caused simply by his presence was devastating. He didn't need to touch. He didn't need to explicitly threaten. He only needed to appear, smile, use the diminutive he used when he still pretended to be a decent human being. And with that, he undid 3 years of therapy, 3 years of daily work, to convince a traumatized mind that the world was safe enough to inhabit. The second day was when Ethan appeared again. Not in the library this time. He was too clever for such an obvious pattern. It was in the supermarket. She was comparing prices for instant noodles, a survivor's meal, quick and requiring no culinary skills, that had disappeared along with her motivation to take care of herself when she felt it again. That presence, that weight in the air that precedes a predator. She turned around, and there he was, 3 aisles ahead, pretending to look at cereal, but his eyes fixed on her. When he realized she noticed, he waved, casual, friendly, like old acquaintances meeting by chance. She dropped her basket in the middle of the aisle and left, groceries forgotten, just needing to be far away, to be outside, to be anywhere that didn't have Ethan in her field of vision. But as she left, she understood the true impact of what he was doing. It wasn't about talking. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about showing him that he could find her whenever he wanted, that there was no safe space, that the small town she specifically chose because it was obscure, forgettable, improbably on his radar, was no protection at all. He had resources she couldn't have imagined. Or worse, he had an obsession strong enough to spend 3 years in prison, planning exactly that. Third day, the coffee shop she frequented. Fourth day, the bank where she had an account. Fifth day, the laundry room in her building. Each appearance was a coincidence. Each one came with a smile and a casual comment. Funny how we always bump into each other, isn't it? Destiny, maybe? And she knew, with the visceral certainty that came from having survived him before, that it was systematic stalking, disguised as random encounters. And then, the gifts began. First, flowers at the door. Red roses with a card, remembering the good times. And, as if there had ever been good times. As if the entire relationship hadn't been a slow-closing trap. She threw the flowers in the trash without touching them directly, using a plastic bag as a barrier, because even gifts from him could be contaminated. Then there were notes in the mailbox. Nothing explicitly threatening. Ethan was too smart for that. Just messages that sounded superficially romantic, but carried a sinister subtext for those who knew the context. Do you still wear that perfume I liked? You always said it was only mine. Possessiveness wrapped in longing. I remember the way you smiled when I got home. I miss it. A rewriting of history where smiling when I got home was actually pretending to be happy to avoid violence if he seemed unhappy. The most terrifying revelation came on the 7th day. A photo of her, taken through her bedroom window. She was in her pajamas, brushing her hair before bed, an intimate moment that should have been private. The photo proved that he knew exactly where she lived, that he had visual access to the inside of the apartment, that he was watching her when she thought she was alone and safe. It was that photo that shattered the last reserve of strength she had. She sat on the bed, staring at the image of herself captured without her consent, and understood this wasn't going to stop. No matter how much time passed, how many miles separated them, how careful she was. Ethan had decided she was still his, and men with that mentality don't give up. They don't respond to logic or emotional appeals or court orders. They only respond to a force greater than their own. And she had no greater strength. I had pepper spray that would expire before I could use it. I had an emergency number that would arrive 15 minutes too late. I had a restraining order that was just paper with no real power. I had a body that still remembered what his fists did, a mind that carried the exact blueprint of how destruction happened. But I had no strength to prevent it from happening again. It was in that moment of utter despair, in that silent surrender to the inevitability of being found and destroyed again, that an unconscious decision emerged, not to ask for help, because asking for help required admitting weakness, required trusting that someone would come, required hope that she couldn't afford. Better to accept that she was alone in this. Better to prepare for the worst and not be surprised when it arrived. Except someone was already watching. Someone had already noticed a change in her the way she entered the library now, her eyes scanning the room before each step, her constant defensive posture, her leaps at the slightest sound. Someone who recognized the body language of a person being hunted because they had seen it many times in a career far too long. And that someone, Sheriff Jake Dawson, was already beginning to connect the dots she was desperately trying to hide. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a specific type of observation that goes beyond simply seeing it, a profound recognition born from shared or witnessed experience, so many times that it becomes second nature. Jake Dawson had developed this kind of insight over 15 years, protecting a small town where everyone knew everyone else, where secrets were rare, but when they existed, they were guarded with a ferocity proportional to the pain they carried. And he had learned, through too many cases and too many emotional scars, to read in people what they didn't say aloud, ever. Since she arrived 3 years ago, he'd noticed, not in an invasive or inappropriate way, but the way a good police officer notices registering patterns, cataloging behaviors that didn't quite fit. A young woman, perhaps 26 at the time, arriving alone in a city where nobody arrives alone unless they're fleeing something or searching for something. No family visiting. No friends from her previous city keeping in touch. No presence on the social media that he discreetly checked during the informal background checks he conducted with all newcomers. She rented a ground floor apartment with 2 exits. A detail most wouldn't notice, but Jake did. She accepted a job at the library that paid less than her qualifications, suggested she deserved heed. Seen her resume when the mayor asked for her opinion on hiring her, and her formal education plus prior experience at a large publishing house indicated she was deliberately choosing obscurity over career advancement. Another sign, she maintained a non-existent social circle. She never accepted invitations to community dinners, festivals, events that were the lifeblood of a small town. Yet another sign. But it was her body language that truly told the story. The way she scanned her surroundings before entering any space, her eyes scanning corners, identifying exits. How she kept her physical distance from men, especially taller ones, or those with an imposing physique. How she jumped visibly, involuntarily when someone approached from behind without warning. How she checked over her shoulder during walks, even in the middle of the day, even on safer streets. How she disappeared before sunset, as if darkness brought a danger that daylight kept away. Jake recognized these signs because he had seen them before, many times. In victims of domestic violence, seeking refuge in small towns, believing that distance from the metropolis would offer anonymity that big cities denied. In witnesses under informal protection, in people carrying trauma that transformed the entire world into a potential threat. And when he saw it in her, he made a conscious decision to respect her space. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough to understand that survivors need control over their own narratives. That forcing conversations, demanding explanations, offering unsolicited help could be re-traumatizing instead of helpful. So he simply observed from a distance. He increased patrols in the area where she lived. Without making it obvious, he discreetly checked if there were any restraining orders or active warrants related to her. There weren't. He kept an eye on new men arriving in town, especially those asking questions about a young woman working at the library. For 3 years, this was the silent arrangement. He protected without invading. She existed without asking for help. And it worked, in a somewhat dysfunctional way, because the threat she fled remained distant, until it no longer did. That Tuesday, Jake was finishing his afternoon patrol when he saw her leaving the library. Initially, he didn't notice anything unusual. Correct time, same route as always. But then he processed the expression on her face. It wasn't normal worry or tiredness from a long day. It was pure terror. Her face was so pale she looked ill. Her hands were visibly trembling, even from a distance. A look he knew intimately. The look of prey that had just crossed paths with predator and survived by chance. Not skill. Instinct kicked in before conscious thought could form. Jake turned the patrol car around, following at a distance. Not an obvious one, he knew how to tail someone without being detected. He saw her quicken her pace. He saw her look back 3 times in 2 blocks. He saw her practically run the last few meters to her building, disappearing through the door with an urgency that defied any benign explanation. He parked where he could see the building's entrance. He waited. The light in her apartment came on, then went out 10 minutes later. Midday, and she was in total darkness. Another sign. Jake picked up his phone, considered calling, checking if she was okay. But he stopped, because an official call would require an explanation she clearly wasn't ready to give, and a personal call. Well, they didn't have that kind of relationship. Not yet. So he did what investigators do. He started putting the pieces together. He went back to the station. He accessed the system. He ran her. Name, full name this time. Not just the superficial check he had done 3 years ago. And that's when he found out. Ethan Mercer. Restraining order issued 3.5 years ago. Aggravated assault. Domestic violence. 5-year sentence. Hospital records sealed, but available summary indicated significant trauma. Jake read every word of the original police report. Neighbors called emergency services. Screams. Patrol found her unconscious. Ethan trying to escape through the fire exit. Prosecution built a solid case. Swift trial. Fair sentence by legal standards, but insufficient by any measure of real justice. And then, he found it. Conditional release. Approved 6 days ago. Ethan Mercer was free. Technically still under a restraining order, but those orders were only effective when enforced. And enforcement required the victim reporting a violation, and the system responding quickly enough to import it. In practice, a piece of paper against a determined man was minimal. Protection. The transformation that occurred in Jake at that moment was visceral. He had dealt with hundreds of cases throughout his career. He had seen violence in various forms, but there was something about reading a clinical report describing the extent of the injuries Ethan had inflicted on a woman Jake saw every week at the library, a woman he had watched rebuilding her life brick by brick, that triggered something primal in him. It wasn't just professional outrage, it was personal anger. It was a need to protect that transcended duty. He checked recent arrival records in the city. There it was, Ethan Mercer, checked in at the motel on the outskirts of town 5 days ago. The same motel Jake passed every morning during his patrol. The same motel that was exactly 2 blocks from the library. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a bounty hunter establishing a base of operations. Jake should have followed protocol. He should have called her, officially informed her about Ethan's release, offered resources through appropriate channels. But protocol assumed that the victim trusted the system, that the system had spectacularly failed her by releasing the abuser after he served only 60% of his sentence. Protocol assumed a clean, uncomplicated, professional relationship that Jake had observed her for 3 years, had silently cared, had developed a sense of responsibility that went beyond the badge. So he made a decision that technically violated some rules, but emotionally was the only right one. He was going to protect her, with or without her permission. He was going to find out what Ethan was planning. He was going to ensure that history didn't repeat itself in his territory, under his watch, where he had the power to make a difference that the legal system consistently failed to make. The first action was investigation. Jake spent the entire night compiling everything about Ethan Mercer. A complete criminal record revealed that assaulting her wasn't an isolated incident but a pattern. 2 previous ex-girlfriends with restraining orders. Multiple domestic violence charges that were dismissed because victims were too afraid to testify. Ethan was a serial predator who had refined his techniques over years. The second action was surveillance. Jake started going to the motel 3 times per shift. He noticed that Ethan's car always left at the same times, coinciding with her work hours, lunch break, and the end of her shift. Systematic stalking. Ethan was mapping her routine, waiting for the right moment. The third action, the most difficult, was deciding when to intervene. Because Jake knew that the wrong approach could worsen the situation. It could make her retreat further, shut down completely, refuse help because it came packaged in an authority she might not trust. He needed perfect timing, the right approach, the right words. And the opportunity came the next day, when Jake saw her leaving the library again, this time with a look that was not only frightened, but exhausted. The look of someone who had slept 0 hours, who had spent the entire night in hypervigilance, who was operating on pure survival instinct. He waited for her to get home, gave her 30 minutes to breathe, then parked his patrol car in front, and walked to the door. She knocked, gentle but firm. She waited. She could hear movement on the other side, her checking the peephole, recognizing her uniform, internally debating whether to open it or pretend it wasn't there. Finally, the chain was removed. The door opened just a crack. Her eyes appeared, red from tears or lack of sleep, or both. "Sheriff," a neutral, controlled voice. A mask of normalcy that convinced no one. "We need to talk." Jake kept his voice low, not threatening. "About Ethan Mercer." She froze. The impact of the name was physical. Shay took a step back, holding her breath. "I don't know what you're talking about. I know you know. I know he's in town. I know he's following you. And I know you're trying to cope alone because that's what survivors do when the system fails." Jake held her gaze. "But you don't have to. Not this time." It was the way he said it, not with pity, not with judgment, but with absolute recognition of her experience that cracked her defenses. Tears she had held back for an entire week began to fall. And Jake, respecting her space but offering his presence, simply stood there, a silent witness to the pain she had carried alone for far too long. Comment below. Sometimes the right person recognizes your pain without you needing to explain. Has that ever happened to you? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a specific moment in any trauma journey where you have to choose between continuing to carry the weight alone or allowing someone to help hand. That choice is infinitely harder than it seems from the outside. For her, standing at the door of her own apartment with the sheriff who had just named the monster she desperately tried not to think about, that choice was crystallizing in real time. Letting him in meant admitting she couldn't cope. It meant vulnerability. It meant trusting a man with a badge and a gun when the last man she trusted almost killed her. But the tears had already begun. And once the first line of defense breaks, the rest crumbles like dominoes. She stepped back, opening the door wider, a silent gesture of surrender. Jake entered, closing the door behind him. Carefully not locking it, she noticed, leaving her in control of the exits. A small but significant detail that part of her recognized as the deliberate consideration of someone who understood the language of trauma. The apartment was exactly what Jake had hoped for. Minimalist to the point of Spartan. Worn sofa, small table, bookshelf organized by author. No photos, no personal decorations, no objects that suggested permanence or emotional investment in the space. It was temporary housing. Even after 3 years, it was a place to survive, not to live. She sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion to her chest as an improvised shield. Jake stood initially, then realized his height was intimidating from her angle, so he sat in the opposite chair, maintaining a respectful distance, but an approachable presence. And he waited. Because he had learned in 15 years of work that sometimes the best interrogation isn't interrogation at all. It's simply creating safe space and letting the person fill the silence with truth. "How did you find out?" Her voice was hoarse from crying silently in the last few days. "It's part of the job. Someone new comes to town, especially someone checking into a motel and not renting a permanent place. I notice." Jake maintained a neutral, factual tone. "I circled his name. I saw a connection with you. I connected the dots. You investigated my past." It wasn't an accusation. It was the weary realization of someone who expected privacy in a small town and discovered that privacy was an illusion. "I read public reports, restraining order, criminal case, pause, and hospital report. Not all the details, those are sealed, but enough to understand what he did." She closed her eyes, breathing deeply. When she opened them, there was resignation there. "So you know? And now you're here for what? To tell me to be careful? To offer me protection that we both know you can't guarantee 24 hours a day? To give me a hotline number that won't stop him from breaking into my apartment?" Jake understood the bitterness. He had heard before from other victims that the system had failed. "I'm here to listen. And then, to help in a way that actually works. Not just protocol that looks good on paper, but doesn't protect anyone in practice." It was brutal honesty that disarmed her. She expected platitudes, empty promises, guarantees that they both knew were lies. She didn't expect honesty about the system's limitations. Then she started talking. She recounted the past week. Ethan showing up at the library, the subsequent casual encounters, the flowers, the notes, the photo through the window that proved her privacy was completely violated. Jake listened without interrupting, his jaw growing progressively more tense with each revelation, but he said nothing. He simply let her empty out everything she had kept inside. And the worst part, she said, her voice breaking, is that I can't prove anything. Technically, he didn't violate a restraining order because all the encounters were casual in public spaces. The flowers and notes don't have his name on them, so I can't prove they came from him. And the photo, double quotes, she stopped, trembling. Even if I show it to the police, what are they going to do? He'll say he was just passing by, that he didn't know I lived there, that it was an accident. It wasn't an accident. Jake finally spoke, his voice low but heavy with certainty. Men like Ethan don't do anything by accident. Everything is calculated. He's psychologically surrounding you before making a physical move. It's standard, I know. 2 words that carried the weight of painful experience. I've lived this pattern before, and I know how it ends. Jake leaned forward, hands between his knees, his intense gaze fixed on her. It's not going to end like this time. Not while I'm here. She almost laughed, but the sound came out more like a sob. You can't be here 24 hours a day. You have a whole city to protect. And eventually, you'll go to sleep. You'll have to attend to another emergency. You'll be 5 minutes too far away when he decides to come in. You're right that I can't be physically present all the time. Jake nodded. But I can do other things. Increase patrols in this area. Talk to Ethan directly. Make it clear that he's being watched. Document every violation, every approach. Build a case that the prosecution can't ignore. You don't understand. Frustration bled through. Exhaustion in her voice. He's smart. He knows exactly how to operate on the fringes of the law. And he has a lawyer who's better than any small-town lawyer could afford. Last time he got hospitalized to secure a conviction. And even then he only got 5 years. Served 3. The system doesn't protect people like me. It only punishes after the damage is already done. The hidden truth in those words hit Jake like a punch. Because she was right. The system was reactive, not preventative. And for Ethan to face real consequences, she would have to be hurt first. It was a brutal injustice he had seen repeated far too many times in his career. You're right about the system, Jake admitted, but not about being alone in this. Because I'm going to do something protocol doesn't cover. I'm going to make it my personal mission to ensure he doesn't get near you. Why? She looked at him with genuine confusion. You don't even know me. Why would you make this personal? Jake took a while to respond, processing his own motivation. When he spoke, his honesty surprised even him. Because I watched you rebuild your life for 3 years. I saw the work you put into each day just to keep it going, and the idea of Ethan destroying that, of you having to start over again, or worse, not starting over, because he finishes what he started, double quotes, he paused, emotion crossing a professional barrier he normally kept intact. I can't let that happen. I won't. The silence that followed was heavy. She studied his face, searching for lies or hidden agendas, and found none. Only the sincere determination of a man who had decided that protecting her was his priority. And something inside her, a small, frightened part that had stopped trusting 3 years ago, began to consider a dangerous possibility. Maybe he really did want to help. Maybe not all men were like Ethan. What do you want me to do? The question was a simultaneous surrender and beginning. First, I want you to document everything. Every time you see him, every gift, every contact, timestamps, photos if possible, witnesses if there are any. We'll build a solid case. Jake pulled a card from his wallet. Second, my personal number. Not department, not emergency, call me directly, anytime, any situation. Even if you think it's paranoia, even if you're not sure, I'd rather have 10 false calls than one where you didn't call and needed to. She took the card, her fingers brushing his hand briefly. The contact was electric in a way neither of them expected. Jake didn't pull his hand away immediately, and neither did she. They just stood there, an extended moment where a silent transformation was taking place from strangers to allies, from her isolation to a partnership that could keep her alive. And third, Jake continued, his voice slightly lower, I want you to understand that you're not alone in this. I know trust doesn't come easily after what you've been through. I'm not asking you to trust me completely tomorrow. I'm just asking you to leave the door open for possibility. Tears returned, but different this time. Not despair, relief, small, fragile, but real. Thank you, she whispered, for believing, for not making it seem like I'm exaggerating or being paranoid. You're not. Jake was firm. You're having a completely rational reaction to the real threat from a man who has already proven to be dangerous. Never doubt that. They spent another hour talking Jake, asking specific questions about Ethan's pattern, her routine, current security measures. He suggested changes, better locks that he would install personally, a basic security camera pointing at the door, a change in routine to be less predictable. They weren't perfect solutions, but they were layers of protection that, individually fragile, together created a barrier. When Jake finally got up to leave, he stopped at the door. One last thing. Ethan is going to climb. Men like him always climb when they realize control is slipping. So when not, if he makes a move, I want you to know, I'll be ready. And he's not going to like what he finds. After Jake left, she locked the door all 3 locks, but for the first time in a week, she didn't feel the need to move furniture as well, because for the first time, she had an ally. She had someone who knew the whole truth and hadn't run away. She had Sheriff, who had transformed protecting her from a professional obligation into a personal commitment. And Jake, driving back to the station, was already planning his next steps. A visit to Ethan's motel. An informal conversation, making it clear he was being watched. Increased patrols. And if Ethan made a stupid move, when he did, Jake would be waiting. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there is a fundamental difference between a potential threat and an imminent threat. The exact moment when one crosses over into the other is when people trained to recognize danger sense a visceral change in the air, like atmospheric pressure dropping before a storm. For Jake, that moment arrived 48 hours after the conversation in her apartment, when Ethan's behavior pattern changed from passive stalking to active siege. And for her, it arrived when she understood that invisibility was no longer a viable strategy, that Ethan had decided to make his presence inescapable. The casual encounters began to multiply. No longer 1 a day, but 3, 4, 5. The supermarket, where she had never seen Ethan before, there he was, pretending to compare cereal brands in the next aisle. The cafe where she drank hot chocolate every Thursday at 3 in the afternoon, he showed up, asked for a table overlooking hers, and observed her without disguising it. The post office where she picked up rare packages. Coincidentally, Ethan also had a package to pick up at exactly the same time. The message was clear. There's nowhere you can go where I can't find you. There's no routine. I don't know. You're always being watched. And the gifts escalated. It started with flowers, red roses, that she threw away without touching. Then came chocolates, a specific brand she used to like when they were together, a detail that proved Ethan remembered everything, that he had cataloged her preferences to use as a psychological weapon. Then jewelry, a cheap necklace but identical to the first one he gave her years ago, as if reconstructing happy memories could erase hospitalization. But it was the notes that truly revealed a dangerous shift in his approach. They began almost romantically, in a morbid way. I miss you. We were good together, remember? Then they became more insistent. You can't ignore me forever. We need to talk. Work this out. Then possessive. You were mine. You still are. No other man will want you like I do. And finally, subtly threatening. We just need time to fix what's broken. It doesn't matter how long it takes. It doesn't matter what needs to happen. She documented everything as Jake instructed. Photos of the gifts with timestamps, screenshots of messages that started arriving. Hidon had gotten her new number, something that should have been impossible, but he always found a way. Detailed notes of each encounter, including what he said, how he approached her, touched her, or simply observed. She was building meticulous evidence, but they both knew that evidence only mattered after a crime had been committed. And Jake was determined to prevent crime before it happened. The surveillance Jake established went beyond standard protocol. 3 nights turned into 5. He recruited trusted deputies to cover shifts he couldn't, specifically instructing them to stop and check any unfamiliar cars, any suspicious movement near her building. He personally installed security cameras, not official equipment, but a system he bought with his own money because the departmental budget didn't cover personal protection unless the threat was officially documented beyond reasonable doubt. But Jake knew that defensive measures had their limits, so he took an offensive approach. He visited the motel where Ethan was staying. It was mid-afternoon when he knew Ethan would be there. He knocked on the door. When Ethan opened it, an arrogant smile on his face, Jake wasted no time with pleasantries. "Ethan Mercer. I'm Sheriff Jake Dawson. We need to talk." "About what?" Ethan leaned against the doorframe, his posture casual, but his eyes calculating. "Measuring. Regarding the restraining order you are violating. Regarding the stalking you are committing. Regarding the fact that if you continue, you will end up back in prison, serving the remainder of your original sentence, plus additional time." Ethan laughed, his voice devoid of humor. "Sheriff, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just visiting a nice town. If my ex and I happen to bump into each other, well, it's a small town. She's not an ex. She's a victim with a valid restraining order. And bumping into her 5 times a day in places that exactly coincide with her routine isn't a coincidence. It's stalking, and I'm not going to tolerate it." "Interesting." Ethan crossed his arms. "You seem very invested in this. Official protection, or is there something more personal going on?" Jake recognized the manipulation and attempt to plant the seed of impropriety, that his protection was motivated by romantic interest that could be used to discredit him. Motivation is irrelevant. The fact is, you are violating the law. You have 24 hours to leave town. After that, any presence of yours will be treated as a criminal violation. 24 hours. Ethan smiled, but there was a cold threat in his eyes. "And if I don't leave, will you arrest me for being in a public space? A lawyer will love that. Test and find out." Jake didn't blink. "But I'm warning you. I'm documenting everything. And if you make a wrong move, I'll make sure you go back to prison and stay there full-time this time." That's when Ethan showed his true colors, his mask of civility slipping away for a second. "She's mine, Sheriff. Always has been. And you putting a badge between us doesn't change anything. In fact, it only makes it more interesting when I finally get back what belongs to me." Jake stepped forward, deliberately encroaching on Ethan's personal space. "She doesn't belong to you. She never did. And if you touch her, you'll discover theirs. A difference between applying the law and applying justice. And sometimes justice happens before the law has a chance to act." It was a veiled threat. They both knew it. And it was also a promise. Jake turned and left, but he could feel Ethan's eyes on his back. He could feel anger radiating from him. He had just deliberately escalated the situation because men like Ethan responded to a challenge by making rash moves, and rash moves created opportunities for legal intervention. What Jake didn't expect was how quickly Ethan would respond. That same night, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Ethan's voice, laden with disdain that barely disguised hatred. "Sheriff, I understand you're protecting her. Noble of you. But this is a matter between me and my ex. A personal matter stemming from a shared history you don't understand. I suggest you stay out of trouble where you're not wanted. She has a restraining order." Jake kept his voice controlled, despite his boiling anger. "You're violating it. I suggest you leave town before I enforce it." Ethan laughed, a sound that made Jake's skin crawl. "Enforce it? How? Are you going to arrest me for buying cereal? For drinking coffee? For existing in the same city as my ex-girlfriend? Good luck explaining to a judge that a restraining order means I can't live wherever I want. A restraining order means you can't approach her. An approach includes following, watching, leaving gifts. Everything you're doing. Prove it. A pure challenge. Prove that I was the one who left the flowers. Prove that the messages came from me. Prove that it's not a coincidence that we bumped into each other. You can't, and we both know it." Jake took a deep breath, controlling the urge to say things he couldn't possibly unsay. "I'll prove it. And when I do, you'll wish you'd left when you had the chance. Try, Sheriff. But while you try, I'll stay here. Continue living my life. And if that life occasionally crosses hers, well, there's no law against it." Calculated pause. "Yet, there are laws against harassment, against stalking, against threats, but I'm not threatening anyone." Ethan's voice became almost sing-song, performative. "I'm just existing. I'm just remembering what was ours. And if she feels uncomfortable with memories, well, that's her problem, not mine." Jake hung up without answering, because continuing would give Ethan what he wanted, an emotional reaction that proved he had the power to provoke. But when he put the phone down, his hands were trembling with contained anger. Because Ethan was right about one thing. Proving stalking when the perpetrator was careful was nearly impossible, and the legal system moved so slowly that the victim was often dead before protection arrived. It was that night that Jake made a decision that technically violated protocol, but emotionally was the only viable option. He couldn't trust the system to protect her, so I was going to do it personally. I was going to be closer, much closer, not just patrolling her street, but being present in a way that Ethan couldn't get close without being detected. He called her. It was almost midnight, too late for a business call, but too early for an emergency. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert. Clearly she hadn't been sleeping. "Jake, I need to make you an offer. You won't like it initially, but I want you to think about it before you refuse." "What happened?" Immediate fear in her voice. "I spoke with Ethan. I tried to scare him into leaving. It didn't work. He called, made it clear he wasn't going to back down. And after analyzing the situation, I came to the conclusion, external surveillance isn't enough. He'll find a moment when I'm not there, when I'm minutes away too soon. And at that moment, you'll do what you did before," she finished, her voice breaking. "I'm not going to let it come to that. So here's my proposal. Let me stay in the apartment. Not the bedroom, the sofa is enough. I just need to be there, physically present, so that when Nefi tries to come in, I'll be there with you." Silence. Jake could hear her breathing, quickened, processing. "You're talking about living here, temporarily, until Ethan gives up or makes a big enough mistake for me to legitimately arrest him. Jake, this is ... This is too much. It's beyond any professional obligation. I know." And he knew. He knew he was crossing a line, that he was making something personal that should remain professional. But he also knew he couldn't live with himself if she died because he followed protocol instead of instinct. "But it's necessary. And I'm not going to leave you alone in this." More silence. Then, a voice so low, he could barely hear it. "Okay? You can come." And so it was, in that decision made in the desperation of midnight, that the distance between them completely evaporated. Jake grabbed a backpack with a change of clothes, essential items, and drove to her apartment. When he knocked, she opened immediately, as if she had been waiting behind the door. Red eyes, exhausted but also relieved. "Thank you," she said, "for not making me go through this alone." And Jake, entering that tiny apartment that would become shared territory, understood that he had crossed a point of no return. He was no longer just a protector. He was becoming a part of her life in a way that went beyond duty. And when the inevitable confrontation with Ethan arrived he wouldn't just be a sheriff fulfilling his obligation. He would be a man protecting someone who had begun to mean something to him that he wasn't even ready to name. Comment below. When someone crosses all those lines for you, how can you not start to feel something deeper? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a specific moment in anyone's life when you have to choose between doing what's professionally right and what's morally necessary, and sometimes those two things not only diverge, but become mutually exclusive. For Jake, that first night in her apartment was precisely that moment of brutal revelation about his own motivations, about lines he'd sworn never to cross, and about the fact that some promises become impossible to keep when confronted with the visceral reality of the person you swore to protect being in imminent danger. He lay awake on her couch for hours, uncomfortably small for his size, a spring poking his back, a thin blanket inadequate for the temperature that had dropped during the early morning, but physical discomfort was nothing compared to the mental turmoil. Because for the first time in 15 years of an impeccable career, Jake was questioning not just a specific decision, but the entire philosophy he had built around police work. The idea that he could protect everyone equally, that his badge made him an impartial guardian of the law, that emotional involvement was the enemy of clear judgment. The truth he had avoided, confronting since the moment he saw her leaving the library, her face pale with terror, was now impossible to ignore. He wasn't doing this merely out of duty. The badge was a convenient excuse, a comfortable rationalization for something far more complicated. He cared about her, not in the abstract way of a police officer caring about a citizen, but in a personal, specific way that completely transcended his professional role. Jake had a history of excessive involvement. 3 years ago, a domestic abuse case he took too far nearly cost him his badge when it became clear his motivation went beyond justice. 2-week suspension, psychological evaluation, a promise to himself never again to let cases become personal. Since then, he had carefully distanced himself from any situation that might arouse the wrong kind of empathy. But this was different, because with her, involvement didn't begin with a fling. It began 3 years earlier, when he watched a woman clearly fleeing, something building her life, fragment by fragment. It began with silent survivor recognition, with respect for the strength it took to wake up every day and choose to keep going. And now, lying on that uncomfortable couch at 3 in the morning, Jake faced a question he had avoided. If Ethan hadn't been there, if she hadn't been in danger, would he have found another reason to get closer? At 4 in the morning, he heard movement in the room. Door opening, soft footsteps. She appeared in the doorway, her silhouette outlined against the dim light of the hallway. "You're awake?" "I am." There was no point in pretending. "Can't sleep." They sat in the tiny kitchen, mugs of steaming instant coffee swirling between them. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just work. I know police officers. I know the difference between protocol and this." Jake considered lying, maintaining a professional barrier. But he was too tired, too emotional, too honest at 4 in the morning. "Because I care. More than I should professionally. And because the idea of something happening to you, of Ethan getting what he wants, is intolerable in a way that I can't rationalize as simply a duty." She held the mug with both hands, staring at the dark liquid as if answers floated within it. "Does this worry you? Should I be worried?" Turned into a question back. "It depends on exactly how you feel, and whether you're here because you want to protect me, or because you want something more." Jake took a deep breath. "Honestly, I don't know completely. I know I want to protect you. I know the importance you've gained goes beyond the professional realm. But I also know that now is not the time to explore that. Now is the time to ensure you survive, so there's an afterwards where these questions can be answered." The impact of those words was physical. She blinked, processing raw honesty she hadn't expected. "Thank you for being honest. And for putting my safety before anything else. Always. Simple. Absolute." That morning, while escorting her to the library, Jake faced a revelation he had been avoiding. He was willing to lose his badge if necessary. If the situation escalated, if he had to choose between following protocol that would leave her vulnerable or breaking rules to keep her alive, he would choose her. He would always choose her. That night, when she returned to her apartment, she found her cooking. "I thought that if we're going to stay here, we could at least eat like normal people instead of survivors." It was the first time in weeks that she had done something other than survive. A small victory, but small victories mattered. But as they prepared for bed, the tension returned, because they both knew Ethan was out there. That the silence of the day wasn't peace, but a pause before a storm. Jake stayed awake, listening to every sound. At 2 a.m, he heard footsteps in the hallway. Testing the doorknob. Jake was on his feet instantly, gun in hand. He looked through the peephole. Ethan, trying to open the door. Jake could have confronted him, arrested him. But Ethan gave up, walking away. Jake had proof now. The camera captured everything. Clear violation. When he returned, she was awake. He was here, he was there, but he didn't go in. And now we have evidence. Jake showed the recording. That's enough for an arrest. She should have been relieved, but Jake saw fear. He'll be back. When he gets out, he'll come back even angrier. Then I'll be here. A promise that would cost everything. Always. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because true intimacy isn't born from grand declarations or cinematic moments, but from shared vulnerability at 3 a.m, when defenses are too low to lie and exhaustion is too profound to fake. For Jake and her, that early morning on her couch, with reheated coffee cooling between them and the city sleeping outside, was when the final barrier began to crack, not dramatically, but in small, honest fissures that allowed light into spaces they had both kept in darkness for too long. The days that followed established a strange and intimate routine. Jake slept when he could on the sofa. He woke up before her, made terrible coffee that she drank without complaint. He escorted her to the library, discreet but always present. He returned during patrols, checked the perimeter, maintained a vigil that was both professional and personal, and at night, after the dinner, they began to cook together, she teaching him basic recipes, he learning with a patience that surprised them both. They sat and talked. These weren't superficial conversations anymore. She began to share fragments of who she was before Ethan, and Jake discovered a woman who had been buried under trauma. She loved poetry, had written when she was young, and dreamed of publishing one day. She had a dry sense of humor that trauma had suppressed, but which occasionally emerged, catching Jake off guard and eliciting genuine laughter. She had elaborate theories about book characters, defending interpretations with a passion that contradicted the quiet image she projected to the world. And she discovered Jake beyond the badge. Son of a policeman who swore he'd never follow the same career, but ended up doing just that. Divorced for 7 years from a woman he loved but didn't know how to prioritize. Childless, which he framed as a relief but she heard as hidden sadness. He read philosophy in his spare time, had notebooks full of notes on ethics and morality that he rarely shared with anyone. And he had a scar on his shoulder from a shootout 5 years ago that almost cost him his life, but which he mentioned casually, as if dying were just another occupational hazard. The transformation happened in small moments. When she joked about his culinary skills, and he laughed instead of becoming defensive. When he commented on a book she recommended. And it was clear he had read it because she suggested it, not out of his own interest. When she left the bedroom door open at night, not locked as in the early days, an implicit confidence that she was safe with him there. When he started calling her by the nickname no one else used, an intimacy she allowed without question. One night, 5 days after Jake moved into her couch, she asked him something she'd been holding back. "Why did you get divorced?" The real thing, not the edited version. Jake was washing dishes, a task he'd taken on unasked. He paused, hands in the soapy water, considering how much to reveal. He decided on honesty. Because I chose my badge over her. Repeatedly. Calls that could wait, but I answered them. Extra shifts that weren't necessary, but I took them. And when she really needed me, not to fix the faucet, but to be there emotionally, I was chasing a criminal I considered more important than marriage. Pause. She gave me an ultimatum. My badge or her, and I chose my badge without even realizing I was choosing. Do you regret it? Every day. Simple, honest, not about being a police officer, but about not knowing how to balance things. About thinking that saving everyone meant I could neglect the only person who asked me to just be there. She processed it. Is that why she's here? Redemption? Jake turned, looking directly at her. Initially, maybe, but not anymore. Now I'm here because I want to be, because you matter. Not as a symbol of past mistakes, but as someone He stopped. Realizing he was about to cross the line they had silently agreed not to cross yet. What do you want? Her voice was soft, encouraging but not pressuring. That I care in a way that goes beyond any category I can name. That was as close to a confession as he could get without making things more complicated. And she, instead of recoiling or creating distance, simply nodded. I know. I feel it too. But I'm terrified to trust him because the last time I trusted someone, I almost died. I'm not him. Jake left the sink, dried his hands, and sat on the sofa, maintaining a respectful but not distant distance. And I'm not going to hurt you. But I also understand if you need time, space, certainty that I can't give with words, then give me some action. It was a gentle challenge. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being present. Keep proving that not all men destroy. And he did exactly that. In the days that followed, Jake not only protected her, but participated. He watched movies she chose without complaining, even romances that would normally make him run away. He listened to her read excerpts from books aloud, her voice gaining confidence as she realized he was truly paying attention. He shared details about cases omitting confidential information, but giving her a glimpse into a part of his life he rarely showed to civilians. And he began teaching her self-defense, not formally, but in spontaneous moments. If someone grabs you like this, do this. A gentle demonstration, respecting space, but showing technique. She learned quickly, her body memorizing movements that could save lives. And there was an inevitable closeness in that correcting posture. Adjusting hand positions, contact that was functional but also intimate in a way that neither commented on but both felt. One afternoon, after a particularly intense session where she had managed to escape his grasp perfectly, they stood too close, their breaths quickening not only from physical exertion but from unresolved tension between them. Jake could count freckles on her nose. She could see a small scar above his eyebrow. For 3 seconds, gravity pulled them closer. But Jake backed away first. Because, despite everything, she was still vulnerable. She still depended on him for safety. And he wasn't going to take advantage of that. He wasn't going to confuse gratitude with something more. He wasn't going to add another layer of complication when her life was already complicated enough. She saw the retreat, understood the reason, and part of her, the part that was beginning to want more, was simultaneously frustrated and grateful. Frustrated because the attraction was mutual and obvious. Grateful because Jake was respecting her autonomy in a way that Ethan never had. That night, the conversations deepened. She spoke about hospitalization, not just physical injuries but the psychological terror of waking up not knowing if Ethan would return to finish the job. About the decision to run away, to start over, to build a life so small and controlled that nothing could hurt her, because nothing meant enough. But that's not living, she admitted. It's just surviving, and I'm tired of just surviving. So live. Jake made it sound simple. After Ethan is neutralized, after the threat passes, start living. Do things that scare you. Trust people. Risk getting hurt because the alternative is never feeling anything. What if I start with you? The question slipped out before I could censor it. Take a chance with you. Jake held her gaze for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with emotion he was trying to control. So I promise I'll earn this risk. Not perfectly, I'll make mistakes. I'll frustrate you. I'll have days where my badge complicates things. But I will never, ever intentionally hurt you. I will never use force against you. I will never make you feel small or scared or less than amazing. Tears she hadn't expected began to fall. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief at hearing exactly what she needed to hear. And Jake, seeing her cry, did something he hadn't done before he touched her. Not a squeeze or a posture correction, but a comforting touch, his hand in hers, his thumb wiping away tears, a solid presence without being intrusive. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to cry. Don't apologize for feeling." Jake maintained his touch, a gentle anchor. "You've held it in for too long. Let it out," and she left. She cried for 3 years in loneliness, in fear, believing she was too broken to be loved again. And Jake simply held her, not trying to fix or minimize her pain, just being present in a way his ex-wife had begged for, and he hadn't known how to give then, but was learning now. When the tears finally dried, when she pulled away embarrassed, Jake didn't do much about it. He simply offered her tea, gently changed the subject, and gave her space to compose herself. And in that respect for her process, in that patience that didn't demand immediate reciprocity, he was proving everything he had promised. Comment below. When someone gives you space to feel without judgment, doesn't that change everything? Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because there's a brutal difference between intellectually knowing you're safe and viscerally feeling that safety when an old trauma is reenacted in real time. For her, the sound of that door being broken down at 2 a.m. wasn't just a physical invasion, was a temporal collapse where past and present merged into a single, terrifying nightmare. Every sound, every sensation, every second was an exact replay of the night 3 years ago when she woke up to Ethan breaking down the door and knew she was going to die. Except this time, there was a crucial difference. Jake was there. The week before the break-in had been relatively calm on the surface, but tense behind the scenes. Ethan had been arrested for the documented attempted break-in, spent the night in jail, and posted bail the following morning. Jake had warned her he expected this. He knew the system would fail again. But Ethan had a lawyer who eloquently argued that his client was simply confused about which apartment was his, that there was no malicious intent, that the camera showed him leaving when he realized his mistake. The judge, tired and overwhelmed, accepted the ridiculous argument, releasing him with stern but ineffective warnings. "He'll be back," she said when Jake told her the outcome of the hearing. It wasn't a question. It was the absolute certainty of someone who knew the pattern of behavior. "I know." Jake didn't lie with empty reassurances. "And when I get back, I'll be ready." So they continued their routine, which had become strangely normal. Jake on the sofa, she in the bedroom, both awake longer than they cared to admit, listening to the silence of the night, searching for sounds that didn't belong. But there were also moments of genuine lightness. She teaching him to cook something other than scrambled eggs. He sharing absurd stories of calls, he answered, both laughing in a way that seemed impossible given the circumstances. And a transformation was happening, subtle but profound. She began to sleep better, not perfectly, but without waking up 5 times a night. She started making plans beyond surviving today. She casually mentioned wanting to resume writing, perhaps try publishing under a pseudonym. She began using the word when instead of if when talking about the future after Ethan. "When this is over, I want to travel, see the ocean again." Small seeds of hope sprouting in soil that had been barren for years. Jake saw these changes and felt something he couldn't yet name: pride, mixed with tenderness, mixed with fear that progress could be destroyed if Ethan made the wrong move. So he intensified his preparation. He compulsively checked his weapon, revised his action plan in case an intrusion happened. He coordinated with the department for minimal response time if backup was called in. He did everything he could professionally, while battling feelings that were anything but professional. The break-in happened on Monday, a week and 2 days after Ethan's arrest. Jake was in a light sleep training, and years of experience had taught him to sleep with half his brain alert. So when he first heard the sound of a door being forced open, he was instantly awake. Not fully processed, yet his body reacting before his mind cataloged the threat, but already moving. Already grabbing a gun from the side table, already positioning himself between the door and her room. The sound of the door giving way would cracking. Metal of the lock breaking was explosive in the silence of the early morning. And then Ethan was there, crossing a threshold he had last violated. But this wasn't the calculated and controlled Ethan of previous encounters. It was a drunken, disheveled, dangerous version of man who had lost control of the narrative and was making a desperate move to regain it on the ground. Now, Jake's voice was a command, not a request. Weapon raised, posture firm, no trembling despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Ethan stopped, processing Jake's presence. His glazed eyes focused on him, then drifted to the bedroom door where she had appeared, awakened by the sound, her pale face a reflection of terror that was both memory and present reaction, and something in Ethan completely broke. "She's mine." The shout wasn't rational. It was the primal possessiveness of a predator watching its prey escape. "You have no right to be here. This is between me and her. She doesn't belong to anyone." Jake didn't yell back. He kept his voice firm, authoritative, controlled. "And you're under arrest for trespassing, violation of a restraining order, and any other charges I can add, on the floor." Last time I asked, Ethan weighed his chances. He was drunk, but not stupid. Jake had a gun, he had training, he had the advantage of sobriety and position. But Ethan had the desperation of a man who had nothing left to lose. For a terrible second, Jake saw calculation in his eyes. He was considering attacking even knowing he could get shot. "Don't be stupid," Jake added, reading his intent. "You'll fall to the ground and end up in jail. Try something else, and it'll end much worse. The choice is yours." It was this illusion of control, letting Ethan make the choice that worked. He went down, not gracefully, but obediently. Jake was on top of him in seconds, handcuffing him with practiced efficiency. Checking for weapons, found a knife, confiscated it, holding him until backup arrived. And throughout all of this, she was frozen in the doorway of the room, not moving, barely breathing, trapped between the present, where Jake was in control, and the past, where she was alone, defenseless, with Ethan doing whatever he wanted. Dissociation protected her from fully processing the terror, but it also trapped her in limbo, where she wasn't fully present. When backup arrived for minutes, the record time Jake had negotiated, they took away Ethan, who was shouting threats, vows of revenge, and accusations against Jake of abuse of power, a familiar pattern of an abuser being restrained. But this time, there was a difference. The evidence was irrefutable, the witnesses were credible, and Jake had meticulously documented everything. Ethan wasn't going to get out on bail this time. The prosecution was already preparing a case that would include all the accumulated violations. When the door closed behind the police officers, taking Ethan away, when the sirens faded in the distance, when the apartment returned to silence, except for her labored breathing, Jake finally put away his weapon and turned his full attention to her. She was still in the same position, leaning against the doorframe, her eyes fixed on the spot where Ethan had been, reliving not only this invasion but the previous one, and probably every time he had violated her space and autonomy. Jake didn't approach immediately. Experience with trauma had taught him that approaching too quickly can be traumatizing and can be interpreted as a threat when a person is in a dissociative state. So he simply spoke, his voice gentle, not authoritative but caring. "Hey, you're safe. He's gone. He's not coming back." She didn't answer, her eyes still fixed, her breathing still irregular. Jake tried something different. "Can I come closer? I want to check if you're hurt." A small movement, Not a nod, but an acknowledgement that he was there. Jake took 3 slow steps, telegraphing each movement, stopping a meter away. Did he touch you? Did he physically hurt you? No. First word, hoarse voice. You, ... You didn't let me. I didn't let go. And I won't. Never. Pause. Can I touch you? Or would you prefer space? And it was that question, that recognition that she had autonomy. That touch wasn't assumed, but offered to accept or refuse, that broke the dissociation. She looked at him, really looked, seeing not Ethan or threat, but Jake, the man who had literally placed himself between her and violence, who had kept his promise of protection even when it meant potential physical confrontation. Please, a broken whisper. Please don't leave me alone. Jake closed the distance, not grabbing but gently embracing her, letting her control the intensity of the contact. And she crumbled. Not delicately, but with the full force of 3 years of reactivated trauma. Of fear she had held back while Jake dealt with Ethan. Of overwhelming relief at finally being truly safe. He knelt down, bringing her with him so as not to force her to support her own weight, placing himself physically beneath her, not threatening, not dominant. Look at me, he asked gently. When she did, he continued, he can't hurt you. Not now. Not when he eventually gets out. Not ever. Because as long as I'm breathing, I'll be between you and anything that tries to destroy you. That's a promise. Not as sheriff, but as ... He stopped, realizing he was about to confess something that perhaps wasn't appropriate at that moment. Like what? She needed to hear it. As a man who fell in love with you unintentionally, without wanting to, but completely. It was a confession wrested from a vulnerable place he fiercely protected. And I don't expect you to reciprocate. I don't expect anything, but you need to know that I'm not here out of duty or redemption. I'm here because I can't imagine being anywhere else. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because there's a moment after trauma is resolved, when the predator is captured, when the immediate threat passes, when you can finally breathe without checking over your shoulder, that is paradoxically more terrifying than the danger itself. Because during a crisis, you have a clear purpose, to survive. But afterward, when the dust settles and silence returns, you have to confront something infinitely more complex, who you are when you're no longer just surviving. And for her and Jake, on that dawn after Ethan's invasion, after a confession Jake never planned to make, they were exactly on that terrifying precipice. She fell silent after his words. The man who fell in love with you echoed in the small space between them. It wasn't rejection, but processing. Because for weeks, the connection between them had existed in undefined, unnamed territory, allowed only because circumstance demanded proximity. But now Jake had given it a name. He had transformed the implied into the explicit. And that changed everything. Jake, ... double quotes, she began. But her voice failed her. Too much emotion, too much exhaustion, too much fear of saying the wrong thing when everything was still too fragile to bear the weight of big decisions. You don't have to answer. Jake cut her off gently, reading her hesitation. Not now. Maybe not for a long time. I just needed you to know. Because after everything we've been through, lying about it would seem dishonest in a way I can't bear. She nodded, grateful for the way out he offered, but also truly aware of the fear she had harbored as well. I don't want to lie either. So I'll say this. I'm terrified. Because I feel something for you that I haven't felt in years, that I swore I'd never feel again. And part of me wants to run. Because the last time I trusted feelings like this, I almost died. But a larger part wants to stay. Wants to find out if what's growing between us is real or just a response to shared trauma. It was the most brutal honesty possible. And Jake, instead of being hurt by her hesitation, simply nodded. So we're left with uncertainty, for now. No pressure, no expectations, just ... Seeing what happens when Ethan is no longer dictating every decision. Dawn arrived slowly, as they remained there, on the floor of the apartment that had been violated but was now safe again. Jake eventually stood up, offering her a hand to help her up. "You need to rest." "I'll stay awake. I'll make sure no one else comes. I won't be able to sleep." Simple truth. "Then at least lie down. Close your eyes. Let your body rest even if your mind can't." It was a kind suggestion, not an order. She obeyed, more out of exhaustion than conviction. But when she lay down, Jake did something he hadn't done yet. He sat on the floor beside the bed, his back against the wall, a position that allowed him to see the door but also to be close if she needed him. A silent presence that said, "You're not alone," without words. And strangely, she slept. Not deeply, not without nightmares, but she slept. Because for the first time in 3 years, there was someone literally standing guard. Someone who had proven through actions that the promise of protection was not empty. The following days were strange, normal again. Navigation. Ethan was in jail without bail. This time the judge finally understood the pattern of behavior. The prosecution had presented a solid case. A preliminary hearing was scheduled, but his lawyer was already negotiating a plea deal because the evidence was irrefutable. Jake estimated 6 to 8 years this time, possibly more if they managed to add federal stalking charges through state lines. "And when he gets out?" she asked when Jake explained the legal timeline. "When you leave, you will have had 6 years to build a life, establish support, become the person he no longer recognizes. And I will still be here, if you want me." It was a promise, but also an acknowledgement that she had agency, a choice. With the immediate threat past, Jake should have gone back to his own home. Professionally, there was no justification for continuing to live on her couch. But neither of them mentioned this. He kept staying, and she kept allowing it, a delicate dance of closeness that they both wanted, but neither was ready to formalize. The transformation in their dynamic was gradual, but noticeable. Touch that had been careful and functional began to carry a different weight. Her hand brushing against his arm as she made coffee. His adjusting a strand of hair that had fallen on her face during dinner. Small moments of contact that weren't necessary, but that neither of them avoided. Conversations deepened, no longer focusing on trauma, but on the future. "What do you want, Jake?" asked one night, "when all this is truly over, when you're not just surviving." She thought for a long time. "I want to write again. Publish, maybe. I want to see the ocean. I want to have friends. Real friends, who know the whole story and don't run away. I want, ... double quotes." She paused, her courage momentarily faltering. "What?" Gentle encouragement. "I want to risk loving someone again. Not immediately. Not before I'm ready. But someday." She looked at him. "Someone who understands where I came from. Someone who isn't afraid of the scars." Jake held his gaze. "That person is lucky. When you're ready." And she understood he was saying he would wait. Not indefinitely, not in perpetual suspension, but that he wouldn't pressure her, wouldn't force a timeline she hadn't dictated. 2 weeks after the invasion, she made a decision. "I want to try real therapy. Not just to process the trauma, but to build tools to live beyond it." It was a huge step, a recognition that survival was no longer enough. Jake helped research therapists specializing in trauma. He went with her to the first appointment, waited in the reception area, and was there when she left. He didn't ask what they discussed. He respected her privacy, but he saw in her eyes that it was difficult, but necessary. And slowly, through therapy and time and Jake's consistent presence, she began to change. Not dramatically, but in subtle ways. She smiled more icily. He made jokes without looking over his shoulder afterward. He began to plan not just weeks ahead, but months, years. He talked about going back to college part-time, maybe studying literature formally. A month after the break-in, Jake finally addressed the elephant in the room. "I need to go back home eventually. Not because I want distance, but because you need to prove to yourself that you can be alone without panicking. And because staying indefinitely without defining what we are is getting ... complicated." She knew he was right. 3 more days, he asked. Then you go back to your house, and we'll see what it's like without forced closeness. See if what we feel survives when we're not living together. 3 days, Jake agreed. Those 3 days were a revelation. They didn't avoid closeness, but they didn't force it either. They simply existed together, comfortably, like people who had been through war together and were now discovering what peace was like. And on the last night, when Jake was packing his backpack, she stopped at the bedroom door. I don't want you to go. Not because I'm afraid of being alone, but because I've grown accustomed to you being here. Because you've become part of my routine, my life, in a way that goes beyond protection. It was a confession, a vulnerability that cost everything. Jake stopped packing. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe I don't need more time. That maybe I already know that what I feel for you is real, not just disguised gratitude. I'm saying that I'm terrified, but I want to. Try if you still want to. And Jake, crossing the room in 3 steps, finally, allowed the distance between them to disappear completely. No kiss yet, they weren't there. But a hug, his forehead against hers, breaths synchronizing. I want to, more than anything. But in your time, at your pace. Because sometimes, healing doesn't come from forgetting what broke you, but from finding someone willing to stay while you pick up the piece, someone who isn't afraid of the sharp edges, who doesn't shy away from the still fresh blood on the wounds. Jake had become that someone for her. And now that Ethan was in prison, now that the immediate threat had passed, they faced something far more daunting, discovering who they were to each other without the danger of forcing closeness. Discovering if the trust born of trauma could transform into something real, lasting. Because the greatest risk isn't facing the past that returns. It's allowing the future to begin. It's opening a shattered heart and saying, try again, this time it can be different. And she was ready to take the risk. With him, finally. Share your theories in the comments. What do you think happens when 2 people who met at the worst possible time try to build something together at the best possible time? If you've made it this far with me, if you've felt every word of this journey of pain, protection, and rebuilding, if you've recognized something of yourself in it, the need to trust again, the fear of being destroyed once more, or simply the hope that there are people willing to stay when everything seems impossible, then you understand why these stories matter. It's not just about romance or suspense. It's about what happens when someone sees your scars and doesn't run away. When someone decides you're worth fighting for, even when you doubt yourself. And look, if this kind of story resonates with you, if you want to continue exploring these deep bonds that are born in the fire of trauma and transform into something that heals, signing up here is the way to continue walking with me on this journey. Because I create each script thinking of you who stay, who feel along, who understand that sometimes the best stories aren't those where everything is perfect, but those where imperfect people choose to stay even when it would be easier to leave. Comment below. I'm with you until the end because I want to know that you're here, that this story resonated, that her and Jake's journey touched something real in you. Your comments tell me that it's worth investing hours, building every detail, every emotion, every moment of true vulnerability. And if this touched you in any way, you felt the tightness in your chest when Ethan broke in. If you recognized her courage in trusting again, if you understood the weight of Jake choosing to stay without guarantees, leave a like so I know. It's not about numbers. It's about connection. It's about knowing that what I create finds you on the other side of the screen and resonates in a genuine way. And because I know you don't want this story to end here, because stories like this demand a continuation, demand to see what happens when the danger passes and real life begins. When 2 people have to discover who they are without trauma dictating every decision. There's a video here that continues in the same vein, exploring this delicate territory between healing and love. Click and follow me there. Their story is just beginning, and so is our journey together. Until the next chapter.